Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Virtual Legality. I'm your host, Richard Hoeg, managing member of the Hoeg Law business law firm of Northville, Michigan, and I have no idea why I did my more formal introduction there as I'm now getting waved at. It's just that kind of morning. Thank you very much for coming and visiting with me on a Saturday morning here, at least in my time zone, the East Coast of the United States. I suspect you already know what we're doing here. We're going to talk about some things, answer some questions that patrons had, and then talk to the community, the chat, the rest of you. But for those that don't know, the channel is supported by Patreon, by viewers, subscribers, listeners like you. And one of the tiers at that Patreon is asking me questions, or making sure more specifically that your questions are answered, because we always have time for community questions in this space, and getting nice slides about those questions and a little presentation behind them. So sit back, relax. We have 3 Patreon questions today, and then we'll be talking to chat. And if you have any questions, as I like to say, please do tag them for me with an @Hoeg Law, or of course, super chats, always welcome. But please don't feel obligated to do that. That just makes it easier for me to see, and I will try to get to everyone that I do see, but I might miss some. So bear with me. Just a person, and I'll try to get through them as best as I can. With that said, hopefully everybody can hear me. Let's talk about some delightful patron questions today. The first of which goes as follows. Hello, Rick. I know I'm usually a quiet little Patreon person, but I figured I'd ask a question this time since question time is going to be the day before my birthday. So first of all, I included that part because I want to say happy birthday. I think that's fantastic, and tying in virtual legality with your birthday brings a warmth to my cheeks. I really appreciate that, and thinking of that in the same fashion. Do you have any pets? And if so, what kind? And do you have any fun stories that you can tell about them? Also, do you have a favorite animal? Real or imaginary? I like the breadth of that question, because why limit yourselves just to what you can see? But my animal is real. But we'll talk about that in just a second. The first question is, do you have any pets? And I'm happy to say that at least in the household, I do. I'd like to introduce you to Loki, the Hoeg family's bearded dragon. Now, my wife wants me to make sure that you understand a few things about this. This is not my pet. This is my eldest daughter's pet. She loves Loki. Loki is a fantastic friend and a wonderful companion for her. We have him sitting in the kitchen. He's got his own nicely lit, nicely heated space. But in terms of fun stories, I have to say this. Loki's afraid of me. Loki doesn't like me. I'm the biggest person in the house. He can hear me coming in from any direction into the kitchen. And, well, to be frank, he goes and he hides in his cave. He goes and hides in his hole. So for the most part, Loki and I have a somewhat standoffish relationship. But he's fantastic, and he's brought out to watch TV with us, to play with on the living room floor, and especially because one thing I didn't include is that this Patreon subscriber said that she really likes dragons, and I thought, hey, my pet is a bearded dragon, but I do have to admit, not really my pet. But it is the only animal we have living in the house outside of us, of course. And so I wanted to include it because I thought it was cool. I asked my wife for a picture thinking that we'd have something on an iPhone or whatever. But she's a photographer. She has her own business, a photography studio. And she just produces this in 2 seconds. I was like, did you have a photography session with Loki? She said, of course I did. So that's why you get the dramatic lighting and that kind of thing. He had a full setup for his photo shoot. So that's Loki. Thank you so much for asking the question, and happy birthday. That's fantastic. I hope you have a wonderful one. Second question. We hear all the time about the legal fiduciary duty that public companies have to their shareholders, right? We do talk about it all the time in virtual legality. The board of directors, the people that are running the company, the CEO, the officers, not their money. Other people have put that money into the company, and that makes those officers and board members fiduciaries of the company. They can't just do whatever they like with it. They can't just burn it in a fire. They have an obligation to try to treat it with respect, try to grow it. That's the job that they have been given. That's the role they've undertaken. It's often used as an excuse to justify anti-consumer behavior because they are legally required to make as much money as possible, or they could be sued by shareholders. Now, here I want to take a step back. I want to reframe this just a little bit because this isn't wrong. You just heard me describe what fiduciary duty is, and they have a duty to try to keep that money safe, to not waste it, to try to make it grow, to return investment, but required to make as much money as possible is maybe going a step too far. Or if it's not going a step too far, I think it's important to understand that the law knows, the courts know, the judiciary knows that we don't have a portal that we can see multiple universes. So we don't exactly know what maximum money is. We don't know what the best possible thing a board member could have done or an officer could have done. So the law doesn't charge you with that. The law doesn't require you to have done the best possible thing if we could look into Doctor Strange's 14 million universe. It requires you to have undertaken proper diligence, duty of care, and not steal things or do stupid things, duty of loyalty. Those are the primary fiduciary duties that a board member has. And I think that gets confused a little bit because YouTube is a short medium, even though I make long videos. But even when I'm describing these things to people, you say, well, they have to go into gotcha games. They have to go into games as a service. That isn't correct, because a board could rightly surmise that their company has certain special abilities to make linear third-person shooters, to make action-adventure games, that they're really good at making Zelda-alikes, whatever it might be, and that it would be foolish to chase the next thing down the line just because they're seeing revenue growth in various areas, right? So when we talk about this, it's important to know that it doesn't make it so that every game company has to suddenly be making mobile games that exactly mirror whatever the trend line is. The board's duty is to figure out what the company does, how it's built, what resources it have, and try to navigate those waters to the best extent possible. Which leads into the actual question here, and many thanks for it, patron. My question is, why don't we see more shareholder lawsuits? And the answer to that is because they're very hard to win, right? The board of directors and the officership, provided they can say, hey, we looked at this details, we looked at this information, we did our job, we did our homework to think about these things and thought this was best, even if it turns out not to be, the court is going to be very reticent to step into the shoes of those folks and say, you did it wrong, unless there's an actual process failure, right? If you have a decent meeting and you come up and say, you know what the future is? Lacrosse games, lacrosse sports games. We're putting all of our money in that basket, and it comes out, and you say, well, that was the stupidest thing you could have possibly done with my resources. But did you actually go through a meeting? Did you actually go and think about what you were doing? Did you understand why this would potentially work? Can you show why you thought it had a chance? The court's going to be very reluctant to punish stupid board members or officers in that way. The job of the investor is to evaluate, in some respects, the leadership class of the company and say, well, I think you're smart. I think you're going to do something good with my money. I trust you with it. And if they use their judgment, they go through the right proper process, and they just come out wrong, the law doesn't want to punish mistakes. Because that would be massively unfair for a lot of people. It would dissuade folks that we want, smart folks, from actually taking on those positions if they were liable for being wrong about a future that none of us can predict. And so we want to encourage investment. We want to encourage people to go out there and make tough, risky decisions. And that's what benefits us all, because some of those are going to be right. Some of them are going to be wrong. And we don't really want shareholders just saying, you guys are the stupidest, and so I should get my money back. So that's the answer to your question. Is it's a difficult standard that has been set. I've talked about it in some of the videos in the past. There's what we call the business judgment rule that basically says if it works within a reasonable board member or officer's mind, if we can look at it and say, yeah, okay, that could make sense, even if it turns out wrong, which is when you find yourself in court, right? It went horribly wrong. That's why you're in front of a judge. That's why you're looking at these things in a lawsuit context. It went horribly wrong. Could we have known that in advance? Did we miss some kind of crucial step? And if the answer to that is no, then you're probably going to be okay running the corporation. And some people aren't going to like that. In reference to this question, some context was, we see that the bigwigs are sometimes stealing things and all these various aspects of this question. And that's right. You get in those situations and you can potentially win a lawsuit. If we look at Activision Blizzard, for instance, the basis for some aspects of the fiduciary duty complaint are that they didn't try to negotiate the deal hard enough, that they were advantaged themselves by the fact that they were going to get sweetheart deals out of this and didn't actually press for the shareholders enough. And that's a breach of the duty of loyalty, if it is as alleged, right? That would have to actually be adjudicated. But you could see that that would be that they're looking over their individual interests instead of the interests of the company and the shareholders on the whole. That's what the accusation is. And if you make that case, potentially you can win like that. But just being stupid, just saying, hey, you shouldn't have made Call of Duty Vanguard. What were you thinking? Everybody's over World War II. Of course it has a negative reaction. Why aren't you pouring all of your money into Modern Warfare, which is your most successful product in the last few years? You should be figuring out how to monetize that better. A reasoned person can say, yeah, they should have made that call. They didn't. That's not illegal. And so that's why you see those particular problems. As for our last Patreon question, hi, Rick. Just curious if you ever played any Sierra Online games growing up. If yes, what was your favorite game/series? The answer is yes. These are some of my absolute favorites. I often tell, maybe a little bit apocryphally, that I learned to type playing King's Quest, that I was really, really excellent typing Open the Door, which is a phrase that you had to type a lot in that particular game to, you know, transit rooms and spaces and whatnot. So I very much enjoy those games. I'm going to say I have two favorite games here because I'm a cheater and I'm a lawyer and this is my answer. So I know that there's not a plural here on game, but I'm going to cheat a little bit. The first of these is King's Quest 3. I apologize for the quality of these scans. To Err is Human, which one, as you know, if you've been in virtual legality for a while, is a pun as a title, which is very attractive to me just as a person, and is also ridiculous hard. Now, King's Quest would ultimately start to have a kind of zeitgeist understanding that it had a bunch of ridiculous loopy puzzles. That's not necessarily the case, but To Err is Human actually had magic that you were supposed to perform in order to escape from an evil wizard that was trapping you and adventure across the land. And this thing required close reading, really good thinking, and is my favorite of the King's Quest games. King's Quest is probably my favorite series. I think it was the one that was the best realized, the most rounded out by Sierra. But my guilty pleasure favorite series is, as a science fiction nerd at heart, of course, Space Quest. And in particular, Space Quest 4, which was a game in which time travel was prominently featured and in which you traveled between various other entries in the Space Quest franchise, including ones that didn't exist. So you would warp into Space Quests in the future and you would see what they thought the graphics would look like and the various aspects of the game would be. And then you'd go back to the beginning of the first game. And it was more meta-contextual than anything in Marvel now. But it was hilarious. It was fun. And as a kid, I loved those kinds of puzzles. I love lateral thinking. I love actually having to go in and figure out these really, really wacky things in the context of science fiction, in the context of fantasy. So I really appreciate the question because I don't think about those games enough, and I should, because they were a big, big part of my growing up. Absolutely some of my favorites. And I had the Err is Human, the King's Quest 3 strategy guide, which was written as a narrative of the author seeing into a portal into Daventry and essentially describing the aspects like a news reporter of what was happening there. And I absolutely loved that. I carried that around on a number of family vacations. So thank you for asking. Sierra Online games were definitely my jam back in the day. So those are the Patreon questions for this session. First of all, I want to say thank you so much to the patrons and to everybody else that supports the channel, because I could not do it without you. I spend way more time doing this kind of stuff than I ever thought I would 3 years ago, and I am so, so appreciative of everybody that pops their head in. So I want to say thank you first and foremost, and happy birthday, of course. And now we can basically talk about whatever it is that you like. So please do. I'm at the bottom of the chat right now. I can see one at Hoeg Law I'm going to check out. If you asked a question and I didn't even respond to it because I was talking to the patrons and I was answering those questions first and foremost, try me again. At Hoeg Law, Super Chats, anything that makes it bright and colorful on my screen is going to do a great deal of work to help me see it. And let's chat about various things. So first, at Hoeg Law, was the fourth one where that ghoulish thing screamed at you in the beginning the fourth King's Quest? I don't know. Let's see. What... Oh, the fourth Space Quest. Yeah, I think you do have a jump scare kind of thing. Absolutely. See, I'm even remembering the specifics here, so thank you for helping me with that. At Hoeg Law, question, let's pretend you are Microsoft's lawyer. I mean, okay. The ABK deal has gone through. Okay. Xbox wants to acquire Capcom, and Capcom wants them to acquire them. What would you advise Microsoft? How did it go through? What were the signals that the EU or the FTC were sending me? See, the one thing that we don't get in terms of responsiveness as of right now is that part of the story. Microsoft is going to be interacting with these regulators. They're going to have at least a somewhat better feel than we do about how they are thinking about this industry consolidation and whether or not they actually have a tough road or not, going with the FTC or someone else. Capcom, probably small enough that you could be okay with it, but it really does largely depend on what you just experienced, getting that ABK deal through all those regulatory bodies. In short, I think Microsoft is unlikely to stop investing in this space if they think there is profit there, and is also unlikely to just be cowed by regulators threatening things. So if they really want it, if they think that return is great, then probably they should go for it in that scenario where they've gotten the ABK deal across the finish line already. At Hoeg Law. Hi, Hoeg. Hi. Can we start getting more post-mortem content on the channel, like for the Batman and Horizon? I tried to get Colin to have you on the LSM Horizon Spoilercast. Oh, well, first of all, I appreciate that. Colin reached out to me to participate in that Spoilercast. I haven't beaten Horizon. And so I had to tell him, I said, I have about 35 hours into that game. I feel very, very strongly about it. I feel like it's one of the better games that I've played in a while, but I'm not far enough along because I get distracted by shiny objects, right? You say, Rick, well, what were you playing yesterday? And I would say, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands and Ghostwire Tokyo because I just really enjoy novelty and trying new things and new games. So I will swing back around for the end of Horizon, but that's why you don't see me there. So that's my fault. Don't blame Colin, blame me because I can't focus for 80 hours on a given game before looking at the next thing. What else do we got here? And in answer to your first question, more post-mortem content. Yes, I would love to do that. I'm trying to come up with a rubric I can use in terms of schedule or whatnot that says, okay, here are the Virtual Legality episodes, and then here's some post-mortem stuff that you can ignore if you want to. I'm toying with the idea of separating out a separate channel because I do get comments like yours that say, hey, there's pop culture that we want you to talk about, which is cool, and I very much appreciate it. And then I also get comments from things that even lightly touch on perhaps non-legal aspects, the Virtual Legality extras, that essentially go, stay in your lane. We're here for law. What are you talking about? You may have seen a comment, I don't know if it was a week or two ago, where someone said, why are you doing all this entertainment stuff? You're a law firm. And I said, well, see, this is how you're going to get more Marvel postmortems because I'm anti-authoritarian that way. So instead of asking me to, you just be like, you'll never do it again. But no, I want to do more of that stuff. I love narrative form. I have thoughts. You'll always capture my kind of capsule reviews of things that I'm going through on my Twitter. If you want to follow me there at Hoeg Law, I just did a very short tweet on the Halo premiere, which I didn't love, which I'm happy to talk about if you want me to. But yeah, I want to do more of that stuff because I really do love it. But as you might have been able to tell, Virtual Legality has been very, 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 very busy of late. And so I've been focusing on the stories as they hit. And quite frankly, I skipped about 6 yesterday that I could have done because I was running the law firm, because I had a couple of appearances, one of which ran late into the night. And so I always have to try to weigh those things because unlike some YouTubers, some streamers that have a bit of a team, I'm just me. And I can't just do this without having at least a little bit of downtime to get refreshed for the next big set of videos, the next big set of things that I do. So I appreciate it. I want to do it more. Still kind of working through how that should look on the channel. At Hoeg Law, when do you think the Bungie deal will close? Will Sony even announce it when it does? Yes, there will be an announcement when it's closed. That's very standard, especially when you're spending billions of dollars. So they'll announce it when they've actually bought the company. As of right now, I think they're likely to get a second look from the FTC or the DOJ, just as this Activision Blizzard deal has. I would say that they're likely to go through a little bit more smoothly, would be my guess. So generally speaking, I think of it as about 5 months, 6 months from when they announced it, which was shortly after Activision Blizzard. So maybe late summer, fall. But you don't know. You don't know these things. You cannot guess the minds of the regulators or what they're thinking with respect to this stuff. So it could absolutely run later than that. But definitely months at minimum. Thank you for the question. Let's see here. At Hoeg Law, not a huge gamer. That's not a promising start for the channel, I have to admit. But enjoyed the world of Final Fantasy 15 a lot. but it doesn't seem to have much attention anymore versus other ones. Any ideas why? Well, yes, I do have ideas why. Final Fantasy 15 is, to its benefit, greater than the sum of its parts. It is a better game than it has any right to be, but it also fundamentally feels incomplete, rushed out the door. And I don't know if you know the development history here, but they switched game directors halfway through after it languished, not getting done for a long period of time. It was actually supposed to be a companion piece to Final Fantasy 13. And I think the open world sections and the hanging with my bros concept of the game works well, and then it doesn't. It's all thrown by the wayside, and the plot kind of goes very fast, and it's kind of skimmed over in terms of detail. I think they fixed some of that stuff with a few of the DLCs they added, and having an actual encyclopedia of characters and things helped them. But in my opinion, Final Fantasy 15 kind of isn't talked about very much because it wasn't a pinnacle of the form for them. And so everybody started to look towards Final Fantasy 16, which was announced pretty closely on the heels of Final Fantasy 15 because it was supposed to be almost done and it wouldn't take that much time. And then it went away for 2 years, 3 years. Now it's pandemic, so okay, we give that credit to them. But yeah, it's the kind of thing where I enjoy Final Fantasy 15. I can see all the flaws. I enjoy Final Fantasy as a series. But I, too, am looking for Final Fantasy 16 and seeing what it brings to the table. So that I suspect, is part of that story there. At Hoeg Law, have you heard about the upcoming DMA in the EU? If so, what are your thoughts on this Digital Markets Act? So, yes, I have. And as reported on, it's very, very serious for the big tech platforms, the ones that we talk about so often in Virtual Legality, that would do a lot of what Epic wants to be done as described. I have not gotten a chance to read through what it is that they've looked at. I've had other reports suggest that it isn't quite as significant in certain important aspects. I will try. I will try to find time to read through it enough to talk about it, to comment on it. But at least on the outside looking in, without the proper context of the primary source material, I would say it looks very important and significant enough that I don't exactly know what the platforms would do. Chances are there'd be a lot of litigation, a lot of questions about whether or not what they are proposing there to control access to the iOS, control access to Android, to force third-party providers to be allowed on there. Basically, everything Epic has asked for in Epic vs. Apple will fly. And if it is allowed to fly, exactly what the platforms could do. They can't really usually cut off the entire European Union, but if it got bad enough, you could see that kind of action in some important respects. So I want to read into it. I just saw it as an article a few days ago. So I appreciate the question. Not quite prepared to give you the full substance there, but I think it's very significant and worth everybody's attention, definitely. At Hoeg Law, it's not your fault. Haha, I haven't finished it either, but the question thread went up and I saw your name wasn't listed. Oh, well, too bad. Glad Colin asked, though. Yeah, I felt bad about that. No, it was very nice of him. He's like, you want to come on to this one? So that was probably you, Don. And I said, yeah, I do, but I'm not anywhere close to finishing it, I don't think, because I'm a walker. If you build me a world and you give me a nice graphics engine, I like to immerse myself in it, which means I am enormously inefficient in actually progressing through those games. So it's going to be a little while before I get to the end of Horizon. Uncivil Law with a super chat. Hey, Uncivil Law. Glad you have your YouTube channel back. Question, what are the top 3 reasons you love me? Well, I mean, obviously I'm a lawyer, so I'm drawn to money. So your $2 is reason number 1, of course. Reason number 2 is the hats. You have excellent hat game. I respect that as a fellow hat game member. And reason number 3 is I think you were one of the first people to come on and ask me to do something with you. And I think that's always cool. The camaraderie here at YouTube, especially with lawyers and things that are doing specific areas of the law, is quite remarkable, actually. There's a number of kind of background support structures and people helping each other on this stuff that you hear awful things about streamers or YouTubers or influencers or social media people. And like any industry, like anything that you can do in life, there are good people, there are bad people. And there are a number of folks that are fully generous with, hey, I have no idea how to do this thing with my apps or thumbnails or anything else. Have any of you solved this in a very reasonable way? Or I have this problem, or YouTube's causing me this issue. Sorry, YouTube. You do cause me problems. And are very willing to help. So that's why I love you on Civil Law. Just Skip at Hoeg Law. This is personal, maybe not legal. Uh-oh, okay. Live services such as MMO when they close. Should there be an effort in saving their code if nothing else? Historical reasons. Sad and waste when lost. I think that's both, really. Because one of the reasons that doesn't happen is concepts in copyright and wanting to have exclusivity in control of what the intellectual property is. And so when I look at this, I would say, yes, absolutely. I don't think any gamer can say that everything should just explode and burn in a fire and be gone. I don't think anybody wants that. But then the question becomes, okay, who's going to pay for it? What are the risks to a company that is the copyright holder? And that's what they're always thinking about, right? We see that when we get to the largesse trap, talking about copyright, is the risks. Oh my God, my game or my content could be associated with some horrible political position or some horribly obscene material or all these various things. And so the risk there gets way too high for these companies. And they also say, well, maybe in 10 years we can Nintendo this and sell you N64 games or whatever our equivalent is for 8, 9, some reasonable amount of dollars in the future. So we're just going to hold it back here in the vault, and we don't want anything to go out to anybody. But in short, yeah, I think the Copyright Office, I think the Copyright Act is still requiring of reform for just digital life in general, should be looking at ways in which archivists in particular are able to save these things. Now, they might not be saved in the way that you like. They might not be saved for everybody's use, but at least saved so that you could refer to them, that you could have a museum kind of component, a library kind of component to the retention of what is our shared history in gaming. And that isn't quite happening yet, but I would love to see it change. At Hoeg Law, what is the app you use for highlighting? Weava. W-E-A-V-A as a Chrome extension. New job reviewing applications, and I think it could be useful. It is wonderful. It's got some weird buttons that sometimes don't work, and sometimes you have to fight through them. Occasionally, if you're watching a Virtual Legality episode, you might see me go to a new tab and have it be blank, and then have it kind of fire in. That's not me doing fancy editing. That's just me responding to the program as it goes. But I still thought, hey, highlighting stuff on web pages is super, super useful. And I went through a number of them to figure out one that I was comfortable with. In fact, I run two at the same time in case one isn't working with the code on the page. The other one is called Super Simple Highlighter, which, does what it says on the tin. But it doesn't work with PDFs, which Weava does. So that's why I use that. Thank you for the question. At Hoeg Law, did you see the article from about a month ago where a Japanese analyst suggested it would be extremely difficult for a foreign company to acquire a Japanese company? Thoughts? I would argue that extremely difficult is not a statement that is falsifiable. It is an opinion based on your experience doing deals and how you feel about these various jurisdictions. I am not going to sit here and pretend that there aren't hoops to jump through with foreign acquisitions. I just want the internet to be aware that they happen all the time, that the hoops are jump throughable, very legal term right there. And while it might take a little bit of extra effort, while it might take local counsel, while it might even take a restructuring of entities and maybe even a new entity or two to get it done, that these things can get done. So I wouldn't call it extremely difficult, but maybe mergers and acquisitions is just the business of doing difficult things. So I wouldn't quite say that, definitely. At Hoeg Law, what non-gaming/comic TV shows do you watch? Ms. Maisel, my wife watches that. She loves Amy Sherman Palladino from Gilmore Girls Days On. How I Met Your Father? Yeah, I watch that. Things like that. Doesn't have to be streaming. How I Met Your Father is the sequel to How I Met Your Mother, which is one of my favorite comedies of all time, if you didn't know that. But it's not great. Hilary Duff is not my favorite lead actress. So I'll leave it at that. What else am I watching? Love The Expanse. Did you say sci-fi? Non-gaming, non-comic. Not a game or a comic. Gotcha. So I love The Expanse. What else? Other things I'm watching? I've been watching Yellowstone. I've been watching Black Sails. What else am I currently watching? That's a good question. Movies mostly, I think. So, Spider-Man No Way Home came out on digital. Watched that again. And so, yeah, I watch a lot of stuff that's not gaming or comic related. In fact, I don't know that most of the TV shows that I watch are. My favorite comedy of all time I watch on a fairly frequent basis, which is Scrubs. And so that's always in rotation. And those are the kind of things I love. Oh, and my wife and I are watching Gilded Age. We're big Downton Abbey fans, and Gilded Age is effectively kind of discount store Downton Abbey. So we're watching through that one, and it's enjoyable enough. It's not quite as good as Downton, but that's what I'm watching. Thank you for the question. At Hoeg Law, thanks for your time. I agree, I'll definitely be important to take a look at, provided Parliament actually votes it through. Oh, sure, the DMA. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to follow. As described, it is very, very harsh on these companies, which is usually when you see the big guns come out from them. However you feel about that, whether you think they're their own kind of corporate totalitarianism, totally fine, totally acceptable position. You will see if they think it's an existential threat to their business model or them bringing out the big guns. And that generally means like hundreds of lawsuits. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see. At Hoeg Law. Thoughts on the GTA Online subscription announced yesterday? Remember when I said there were 6 possible videos yesterday? That was one of them. I don't begrudge Rockstar going and trying to make money where it can find it. It does feel bad as a primarily single-player gamer that has enjoyed Rockstar's output to see them put so many resources and so many eggs in the basket of an online services model. That said, you can see how much money they're making. You see the revenue growth that they're achieving with that, and I just can't begrudge them it. It's just no longer for me. One of the things that I try to tell people is that maybe you care about archiving games. Maybe you care about not having games as a service and having better licenses and all these various things that certainly I espouse in various respects here in Virtual Legality. If you don't get that traction, if those voices aren't with you, if you're not having the effect that you want to have, sometimes it's just because the position isn't as popular as you would have it be. Any given person is not the market in and of itself, and if the market doesn't care about gacha games or whales buying microtransactions or doesn't care about archiving or doesn't care about streaming licenses, well, then that's the way it is. And I can sit here and try to convince them of these various things, including the copyright traps and the streaming issues that I've seen, and I talk about, I think, at least once a quarter or so in this space. Then if I can't convince them, that's their livelihood. And so when you see these kinds of things, I don't love it. I don't love GTA Plus. I don't love GTA Online, period. But if they're making money at it, I can't say it's wrong. I just kind of miss the company focused more specifically on putting out just amazing open worlds and single-player content. Let's see. What else do we have here? At Hoeg Law, Sony recently acquired Haven. Yeah, I got in trouble for talking about that on social media. With its Bungie deal pending, could we see more from them before the deal closes? Of that size, in terms of purchasing companies that haven't made anything and have been in existence for less than a year, yeah, you could see those. In fact, I think they did 3 of those partnerships last year, so it wouldn't surprise me if you see the other 2. I want to say it's like Fire something and Deviation get purchased in a similar way. If they're just in the position where they're evaluating their outcomes and saying, we want to buy these potentially great companies even before anybody has any idea what they are doing, because we're now in a higher risk position than Sony has traditionally operated in the past, that's their prerogative. If that's a business strategy shift that was indicated by what just happened with Haven, then yeah, I would expect that pretty strongly from at least the other 2 companies that they partnered with last year. At Hoeg Law, do you have a P.O. box? No, I have an office address rather than a home address. What is your favorite color? My favorite color is green. So you can make your money jokes there, but I like the way that green, it works with my cheek tone, that kind of thing. And that's a bit of a unexpected color for some, because my team in college sports, which I talk about fairly often, the Michigan Wolverines, is maize and blue, and their hated cross-state rival is green and white. So I have to remember not to wear green on Michigan State game days, but it is my favorite color, and thank you for the question. At Hoeg Law, favorite Batman movie? The Dark Knight. I haven't seen the Batman yet in terms of evaluating that particular position, but I don't think it's terribly controversial to say The Dark Knight is my favorite Batman movie. I do have a certain love for the kitschy ones, especially like a Batman Forever with the weird Dutch angles and neon lights and Jim Carrey going crazy. I have a certain amount of affection for Kiss from a Rose, that kind of stuff that is just very, very 90s. But I don't think there's any question that in terms of craftsmanship, The Dark Knight, at least pre the Batman, which I haven't seen, is the best that Batman has ever been. At Hoeg Law, has any looking into Acerthorn begun yet? Yeah, so no. I was actually just asked about this last night. No, I haven't looked at it much. My initial reaction to this is always the same, and I may have spoken of this philosophy recently in the past here. I do try to avoid the drama stuff from YouTube, and you'll see me talk about things if I think there's a pertinent legal angle to discuss. Aster Thorne has been a fan of the channel. If you go back into the channel looks, you'll see them comment on a bunch of videos. And so has Sid Alpha and some other folks that have been reporting on it. So for the most part, didn't feel like it was in a great position to objectively comment on a bunch of this stuff. And I really don't like to dig the channel into drama stuff. So I'd been avoiding it. Then I got flagged from a couple of people saying he's essentially using my videos to make his points. And so I said, all right, I have to have it on the list. But I have been absolutely underwater this month. In fact, I'm probably going to be drafting documents all of the rest of the weekend after this video to go along with however many videos I did this week. So I haven't gotten a chance to look at it. I apologize for that. But I'm still going to be, as a default rule, reluctant to cover it separately. So we'll see after I look into it. Thanks for the question. And is that, let's see, scroll on a little bit. What is Gilded Age on? HBO Max, yes. At Hoeg Law, what kind of game design aspects you wish would be seen explored in more games? As an example, in Gothic, there's a limited amount of enemies that do not respond when killed. I love piranha bites. I have to try Elix too, because they are super janky, their games, but they're really cool little worlds. So I would love to see more of that. I would love to see more scheduling and more specifics around how these open worlds can be, because I think open world, they tend to go into this simple pipeline now, especially with AAA. And the actual concept of an open world could have many, many different ways to actually realize it. Whether it's, enemies that don't come back, or not using a mission structure, but having a more investigatory structure, almost like an Ace Attorney in an open world or something along those lines. And not just like L.A. Noire, which doesn't really fully realize what that kind of concept would be. I think that the open world genre should have broadened out way more than it has in the last 20 years. But ever slowly, it does, in fact, evolve. I think Horizon is doing some interesting things with the open world that I like. What else did I just play? Obviously, Elden Ring is the open world game on the tip of everybody's lips. I'm not the biggest Souls fan. I did like Elden Ring for what I played of it. Again, kind of that 30-hour mark. And I'll dip back into it sometime when I'm thinking about it. But yeah, the design elements I would see people re-examining what an open world game is. We've got the technology. We clearly have lots and lots of ridiculously good artists. They can make that world. We got to start evolving the gameplay that goes into that world. That's what I would see. And I love Piranha Bytes. So thanks for bringing them up. At Hoeg Law, Mrs. Hoeg has good taste. If she's an Amy Sherman Palladino fan, you should join her. Maisel's fantastic. If she hasn't seen it, tell her to watch Bunheads. She and my eldest daughter are watching that literally, like, right now. It might be literally. They're watching it today. They might be watching it in the other room. Sutton Foster stars with Kelly Bishop, 18 episodes. Yep. At Hoeg Law, achievement trophy guides. Are those that don't talk in them more likely to lose a copyright strike versus those that do talk in them? Yes. So we've talked about infringement, and we've talked about fair use. This is a fair use question. And part of the way to have a stronger fair use argument is to be adding commentary of value in whatever work that you're creating. That said, editing in and of itself is potentially that value. I mean, this is the area that we get in, folks. Facts and circumstances all the way down. So yeah, I think that you're probably better off saying something. But if you don't, and it's clear that you're taking steps and efforts to not just, have a 2-minute stream of you walking from this mailbox to this diamond in a mountain, and then that's your cut. I think that you can do things to strengthen your position, but I hesitate to say more. I can't give legal advice. Yeah, generally speaking, the more that you're adding to a work, the more solid your footing in fair use territory is. Thank you for the question. At Hoeg Law, speaking of Rockstar and GTA, did you hear Michael Pachter's insider info about GTA 6 being Vice City, San Andreas, and Liberty City, plus parts of Europe and London? Okay. Sift reported it about 2 weeks ago. I don't know if I believe that. That would obviously be absolutely massive and could explain how long it's taking, even before kind of a teaser type announcement. But no, I hadn't heard him project that. We'll see. We'll see. That sounds like it could be pretty cool. I do worry that their design will effectively be focusing on how to sell shark cards. I think people have legitimate concerns about that. But I will check it out. Being a fan of JRPGs, indeed, my favorite genre, what are some of your least favorite tropes of the genre, gameplay or narrative? Okay, well, one thing, I always hate the ages that they give us. I always effectively age them up in my mind. So I always hate that. What other tropes? I actually tend to like a kind of simplistic, hey, end of the world kind of thing. You do see a lot of JRPGs effectively try to escalate all the way up to like fighting God or God equivalents. I think that can go a little too far sometimes. Certainly you can still have fun without saying, well, end of the world isn't enough. How about end of reality? Maybe not fully necessary in games of that type. Those are probably the two big ones. I actually like the melodrama they present. There's a certain flavor to Japanese narratives and written games that I enjoy. I grew up on them a little bit with respect to Final Fantasy 2 and 3, the United States numbers there for those. And so I got used to it, especially with some of the best scoring in gaming, in my opinion, from those games and from the Final Fantasy series in general. So I look at it and I say, the melodrama is cool. I know a number of people don't like that or don't have that flavor. But that's cool with me. Saving the world almost all the time. Very cool. But yeah, ages. Sometimes I don't like school. Some JRPGs really like kind of a school day and a schedule and that kind of thing. I don't always love that. Persona does it the best. But I don't always love that in the way that it's treated. And certainly, certainly there can be some somewhat skittish subject matter in JRPGs of specific types. Not usually Final Fantasy, but that can sometimes rub the wrong way. At Hoeg Law, what is love? I'm informed that it's Baby Don't Hurt Me. At Hoeg Law, are you unbreaded? Decidedly not. That's at 3 a.m. my time when that happens last night. I still don't know what happened. You can go check out the archive at Nick Recada's channel. I don't. No, that's enough. Don't ask me that question again. At Hoeg Law, have you ever played Danganronpa? What is your general feeling about murder mystery stories? Love them is the answer to the second question. Danganronpa, I don't love nearly as much as the Nonary games. 999, and I can't remember the random sequence of words that make up the other two games in that series. I love those games. 999 was a revelation to me playing it on the DS. And if you like visual novels and escape rooms and mysteries at all, cannot recommend it more. One of my favorites. And there are 2 sequels to that game, which are very, very cool. Virtue's Last Reward is one of them. Again, random sequences of words. But I love those. Danganronpa, I don't know whether it's slightly too weird, whether I don't like talking to a robotic bear, or what, but it didn't work for me as well. Weird music, but I do like it. I play all the Ace Attorneys talking about murder mystery stories. And I love them as well. At Hoeg Law, do you see any big gaming companies merging together? If so, who could you see merging together? Well, whenever you have a consolidation event in an industry, which we're clearly undergoing right now, you can often have an evaluation of, should we make ourselves big enough that we can't be eaten? Right? That if the concern is that you're going to have to deal with a Microsoft or a Tencent or an Embracer or Sony or whomever, that if you can take on enough stuff, you just get too fat for them to get their wide jaws around. And that can look like, hey, EA talking to whoever and saying, let's just combine, let's fight them off together. I don't feel that right now, but it's just speculation and feel for the market. All of these companies are talking to each other at all times. There are people that are at their offices that are just hired, and their only job is to evaluate strategic business transactions, whether that's acquiring, whether that's selling, whatever that's going to look like. And so people are constantly conversing on these kinds of issues. But I don't really see that. With Activision off the board, it's actually not that easy to get so top-heavy because there isn't a ton of market capitalization out there, even from the big publishers. So I fundamentally doubt it in an important way. At Hoeg Law, oh, wait, I think I skipped one. I skipped a couple. This thing just jumps to the bottom, so I apologize. As a lawyer, how do you manage your work-life balance? Carefully, sometimes poorly, especially as the proprietor of your own firm. So the basic priorities here are family, and then clients, and then the channel. And then the channel's kind of working around trying to fit in between the things that I absolutely have to do. Ethics reasons, clients, I'm their representation. I have to make sure I pay attention to them. If there's a family emergency, obviously that's going to be a big deal to me. But for the most part, my life works around, okay, a news item might pop up. I think it'll take me X amount of hours to put a video together. What does my schedule look like? What are my client needs? And there have been a couple canceled videos or things like that where something comes up and that has to take priority. What can get lost in the wash there is like downtime. I think a couple of people have come in the comments in the last couple of days and said, chill out, because I think people have experience with this. I have experience with this from people that I'm fans of, where you can burn out. You can work too hard on the thing and then have a distaste for doing that work for a while or otherwise. And so I do have a lot of people in this wonderful community pop in and say, like, chill out. We'll be cool. Take a day. Between videos. I did, I prepped an entire video on Wednesday. I did 2 videos that day. Behind the scenes, you guys don't know this. I went through an 85-page major media agreement that I had to do revisions on, and that kind of thing. And yeah, there wasn't a lot of game playing that day. This is bed, work, bed kind of day. And that does happen. But I mean, I also think in terms of work-life balance, it's important to remember that before I started Hoeg Law in 2016, I was a big firm lawyer. And big firm law firms will just eat you alive. They will take as much as you can give them, and then they will ask you for more. And so, I was billing, I don't even know, 2,500 hours a year, which is crazy. So I love to work. I love to stay busy. I love having these conversations with all of you. Nothing that I do remotely comes close to that. And my daughter, maybe a couple of months ago, came in and basically said, unbidden, hey, I'm really happy we get to see you more. And that, that's the dream. That's what it's all about. So I feel like I do okay. I'm not going to lie. Some days are way more stressful than others. And, Saturday streams, Friday night streams, all this other stuff is all work, even though I love it. But I think I do an okay job. You'd have to ask my wife, honestly, if I do an okay job. She probably has some more pointed commentary for you there. Let's see here. I think there was another question. All right, so I saw a super chat I'm going to try to get to. We're at 11:48. Going to do about 10 more minutes of this. At Hoeg Law, do you at all feel cynical about the competitiveness of NCAA football? And as long as it is in Ohio State, I root for the Big Ten, but I have a tough time seeing them beat the SEC on Wisconsin. Yeah, I do. The stuff we watch in college sports, basketball is better because a lot more teams can field a really competitive team, including St. Peter's in the Elite Eight as the first 15 seed to do that. But yeah, I think when you look at football, it's not very competitive. It's not a very flat line that allows people to play. Whether or not you think the SEC does something different, they dominate. The Big Ten dominates over things below them. So it's kind of not the greatest sport to watch if you want to watch balanced competition. And yet, I love my Wolverines. I've loved them my whole life. I loved them before I was an alumni of the school. So and to give you a background to that, again, going towards my anti-authoritarian streak, I became a Michigan Wolverines fan when my family lived in East Lansing, which is the home of Michigan State. And so everybody at my school was wearing green and white colors, and I wore maize and blue because fundamentally that's who I am at a very important place. So I became a Wolverines fan, and I've had it my whole life. And one of the best law schools in America. At Hoeg Law, do you like Gundams? I have watched some streams of the Easy Allies putting Gundam models together. Does that count? I doubt it counts. I don't actually know a lot about them. Big robots, right? At Hoeg Law, could you be possible for you to play some game on stream someday in the future? See, this is the lawyer in me who looks at all these streaming contracts and says, no. Something like Final Fantasy X or another Final Fantasy that is turn-based and has story could work great for discussion of the game. I would really love that. It would obviously take a long period of time. Maybe. Part of the things that I've looked into is, should I be streaming a game once in a while? That kind of thing. But again, it's kind of, do I have 2 separate channels? Do I start to push things off in different directions? I don't know the answer to that. So I have to sort through some of those things. And that's why you get the content that you do is like, okay, I know how to do this. This is what comes out. These are the stories. I can do this. And then if we're going to expand in various places, I really want to make sure we do it right, including we might be changing some of the Patreon tiers. We're going to work with a new platform of a Patreon-like service, which really honestly should have been announced and brought to your attention last week or the week before, but life intervenes, and so hopefully that's in the very near future. So we're working on things a lot, but yeah, streaming games is one of those things I've thought about because I do think we'd get a kick out of it. It would be a lot of fun. We could go over some classics. I don't know if I would do Final Fantasy. I'd probably go start picking out things that I think deserve more attention. I would love to stream Star Control 2 with you all. My favorite game of all time. And I think that would be fantastic. What is transaction law and how does it help content creators? Well, transaction law, if you think about lawyers, they're divided into really two large camps and then specialities that go from there. You have the law and order folks. You have people with gavels in courtrooms and suits and things like that. And then you have me. You have a transactional attorney, a business lawyer, as I like to call myself, which is working on contracts, helping companies get formed, right? You have an idea, you want to do something, and hey, I don't even know. Do I want an LLC? Do I want a corp? What the hell's the difference? How do I get equity? How do I incentivize people? What do my contracts look like? What does any of this mean? You want to have a quarterback kind of lawyer, and that's what I do. I started my own place because I love entrepreneurs. I love dreamers. I love folks that are going and making big steps to do something cool in this world. And I was getting priced out a little bit. My firm didn't love that because they don't pay the biggest bills, right? They aren't the huge company that doesn't even care what you invoice. They are a little bit more close to the ground. I will tell you that, when they succeed, they can pay legal invoices just as well as the next person. But what's important is getting more people into that place where they're comfortable with their position. So I do that all the time. Content creators themselves probably could use a little entity level corporate counsel in certain respects. Hey, are you doing this in your own name? Should you have an LLC put in place? What do these contracts look like? You're evaluating contracts constantly. If you're a successful content creator, you're getting offered sponsorships, you're having conversations with the platform, you're evaluating what those terms of service are. That's the kind of thing that I do. So when you see me do one of those in virtual legality where I go through a contract and things are already highlighted, it's like, yeah, I went through a review before that. It doesn't magically happen. That's essentially doing my legal services for the world, for YouTube, instead of for a client. But that's what I do all the time. Gecko Gamer with a €5 super chat. Very thank you. And I apologize for trying not to ruin my scroll here and making you wait a little bit. Have you heard of this SCP Foundation? So yes, any thoughts on it? Is that the one with like the entries of like alien artifacts and things? Is that like what Control was based on? If I'm thinking of the right thing, I've heard of it effectively because it was adopted as part of Control. I don't have a great taste in my mouth for it because I really didn't like what Control did with its narrative at all. I think it's the worst thing Remedy has put out story-wise in a long time. I know that puts me on the wrong side of a lot of people's opinions, which is totally fine. I'm not here to tell you not to love what you love, but I adore Remedy games, and I loved Alan Wake. I really liked Quantum Break, and then I just think they completely lost the plot with Control. But if that's what I'm thinking of, it's like hidden documents that are fan-created to talk about weird X-Files type objects and mysteries, then yes, I have heard of them. I don't think I've ever visited the site independently. I just know that that's like what Control's baseline was. At Hoeg Law, yeah, that's fair. Danganronpa does have a rather unique feeling. I'll definitely take a look at 999. Thanks for the tip. You're going to love it so much. You get the question from time to time of like, what do you wish you could not remember having done, played, watched, read, whatever, and you could get to experience it again. 999 is one of those things at the top of my list. Magic. Stick with it. Magic. At Hoeg Law here, have you encountered a sovereign citizen as your opponent's clients? No, I'm not a litigator, thank God. No details needed in case of attorney-client relationship. No. Sovereign citizens, for those that don't know, have very specific thoughts on whether or not the U.S. government or state governments can enforce various rules against them, and often premised on pretty wacky foundations. No, I haven't worked with them other than seeing them online. And in fact, people had to explain these things to me. There's a theory that I think if the flag is fringed in some color or not, then the court doesn't actually have the jurisdiction to do what it does to you. it's all kind of crazy. But I saw that once on, I think, Bad Legal Takes or somewhere on Twitter. I said, what is this about? And somebody explained to me on Sovereign Citizen. So I know as much as you do, but no, that would not be the kind of thing that I would get involved in my professional capacity. And I can feel my voice going, so just a couple more here. What is your favorite anime show? I have a couple of choices here. The easy answer is Neon Genesis. But I actually think my favorite anime show was like some kind of weird Americanization of a couple of Japanese shows in the 80s that came over here from the people that brought us, like, I think Power Rangers ultimately, called Macron 1. And this was essentially a tape of things that we had before we could stream things, before we could find these things, when I was much, much, much younger. But I watched the heck out of it. Features what you're used to, kind of a Battletech battleship, 3 fighter pilots that join together to form a big Voltron-looking thing. Voltron's a good answer, too. But Macron 1, check that out. I don't know that that's available anywhere, but that's my favorite anime show. What is your favorite Kirby copy ability? Mine would probably be Needle. I think I'm pretty bland on this. I think I like Sword. He looks like a little Link, a little fuzzy pink marshmallow Link. I don't know how you don't love that. My youngest daughter, I surprised her yesterday because she doesn't follow release dates in any way. I surprised her yesterday with it having already downloaded Kirby's Forgotten Land on the Switch, and she was so pumped. It's cool to watch her kids grow up because it used to be impossible for them to play anything, and now she's like a damn Kirby ninja. She's out there killing everything. She's swinging around, getting all of the sword hits properly. She's jumping into traffic cones and diving under the ground. And that's always super, super cool to see. But I think my answer is probably Sword. And one of my favorite aspects of just detail work in Kirby's Forgotten Land, you probably already noticed this, is when you do use mouthful mode to take on a car or a traffic cone or something else, you keep your hat. You're not wielding a sword anymore, but you got the little Link hat, or you got the bomb hat. You got whatever hat Kirby's using on top of your car, on top of your vending machine, on top of your traffic cone. It's delightful. Kirby is delightful. It just puts a smile on your face. At Hoeg Law, Gothic 1 and 2 would be fantastic on stream. Other less known older ones are great too. Maybe a second channel where you just try whatever, let your interest and creativity free. Maybe. I mean, I'm thinking of it because I do want to do more of that stuff if I get time. But I also, I know people are here for virtual legality primarily. And so I do those postmortems on an infrequent basis because I know somebody's going to say, what is this? Why do we care about your thoughts on Spider-Man? And hopefully it's because my thoughts are good and well thought out. But who knows? All right. So I think I got a few more questions, but I can feel my throat going completely. So I apologize for those last 3 questions. Thank you so much for dropping in, having question time with me. It has been fantastic. I love the month of March here in Michigan. You're starting to be able to open windows. You're no longer trapped inside in the winter. Thank you so much again. Thank you to my patrons. Thank you for everybody that asked a question. Thank you to Loki, whose picture takes a second to pop up. Everybody, have a wonderful Saturday. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Virtual Legality.